I have been doing in Psalm 23 what we might call a beginning Hebrew grammar. We just did verse 1. Mizmor le David Adonai ro'i lo exad. A psalm belonging to David. The Lord shepherds me, I shall not lack. We have looked at the grammar closely here at Mizmor, meaning a song, le David belonging to David, Yod He Vav He, the tetragrammaton, and we read Adonai here, and the Ro'i is from Ra'ah to shepherd, Lamed He verb, where the He has elided. We have a cow participle, masculine singular, with the pronominal suffix, the Hirik Yod, first person singular. So a psalm belonging to David. The Lord shepherds me, lo echsad, I shall never want. Negative particle in lo. Echsad from chasad, meaning to lack. It's a cow imperfect first common singular from chasad. And we did that last time. We looked at the vocabulary, mizmor meaning song, ra'ah to shepherd, and chasad to lack. Now, I'd like to do, we might call it lesson 2 in verse 2. First of all, the vocabulary. Nave means pasture. Desha means green grass. Rabatz, to lie down or to recline. Menucha, a noun meaning rest or quietness. And nahal, meaning to lead. So let's look at it very closely here. Benot desha, notice we have a bait followed by a noon and an aleph and a holam vav and a tav. You have the doggish forte in the bait because you're beginning a new phrase, and the bait here is a preposition. So in Na'od is from nave, and here we have a feminine plural noun in construct with desha. So in pastures, and notice here we have the bait, the noon, the hirik under the bait, the aleph, the holam vav, and the tav. And the ot ending is showing a feminine plural ending. And this word, this plural noun, is in construct. Remember, when two nouns are back to back, we call them nouns in construct. So it would be in pastures, and we put of between them, like the book of John. In pastures of desha, grass. Notice in desha, we have the dalet, we have the sheen, and the aleph. And in the dalet, we have a little dot, which makes it hard. And they notice it's a doggish lene, it is called. And that means we give it a d pronunciation rather than a the, rather than a softer. And notice we have the vowels with the three dots twice, segol. And it's like the E, the short E. So benot desha, in pastures of grass, yad bitseni. Notice yad bitseni is from the root rabatz, but let me go through the whole of it here. Notice you have a yod. Underneath the yod, you have a pathot, a short A vowel. Yar, the resh is the next letter, like an R, and you have a closed syllable, yar, and therefore you have a shava underneath the resh. It's a silent shava, yar, and then beat seni. Notice beat seni, you have a bait, and you have a doggish in the bait. Yad beats, so it has a hard pronunciation. Uh, it basically is a doggish lene. Yar beat, and then you have a little dot under the bait, followed by the yod to the left, which is a long I vowel. Yar beat seni. And then we have a tsate in the next consonant. And underneath the tsate, we have two dots called a tsere, which is like a long E vowel. Yarbitseni. Then you have a noon, and follow underneath the noon, we have that little dot and the little comma like at the side of the noon. That's a long I vowel called a hirik yod. So it's yarbitseni. And notice that little wishbone after the tsade is putting emphasis. At that point, I should say it's a pause. It's a pause. Yarbitseni, and then we pause. It's a major pause. It's called an athnach, A-T-N-A-C-H. So we would read it then, Benot Desha Yarbitseni. And it is interesting that as we look at this Yarbitseni, we ask the question, what is that? Well, the root is rabat, meaning to recline or to lie down. That's the root that you'd be looking up in a dictionary. And I would encourage you to get a simple dictionary, like Langenscheid, or something that's simple that you could look up words very quickly. And we'll talk about tools a little bit here in a little bit, maybe in the next video. But notice here we have a yod, which is a prefix. And in Hebrew, you have perfect and imperfect time, I should say. Or perfect means action is a better way to put it. Normally, perfect looks at past time, and it looks at completed action. Imperfect looks at present or future time, and when you have an imperfect, you have a prefix, and that means you have a vowel before the root. In Hebrew, a root normally has three radicals, sometimes two. Here we have a resh, a beit, and a tzaddik, and you always go back to the what is called the cow perfect, rabats. That's what you would look up in the dictionary. Then the other thing to notice here, you have that yod prefix, and look at the vowel underneath. It's an a vowel, a pathot, and look at the vowel between the beit and the tzaddik. It's a long I vowel called a hirik yod, yarbitseni. And in Hebrew, these are called thematic vowels, and they determine what stem we're looking at. In Hebrew, there are 7 stems. There is what is called the kal, the simple stem, or the g, the grun stem, or the ground stem. And basically, if we were going to use an example, let's take the verb, for example, shabar, to break. You would have shabar, a shin, a beit, a resh, and 2 a vowels. That would be third person, but that would be your kal perfect. If you wanted to put it into the future, yishbor, you would put, and we're keeping it in the third person, you'd put a yod prefix before it. And so it would be he will break. Then we have nifal, often called the end stem, because the noon comes before the root. Nishbar, for example, would be it was broken. And so the noon puts the simple stem, the kal, into the passive. And by the way, in Hebrew, the verbs are understood often in some grammarians by the verb pa'al, pei ayin lamed, and and as you define verbs, it'll be defined by that word. So nifal is where you put a noon before it, and therefore it's called a nifal. Some just call it a one noon. And then there is hifil, where you put a hey, hifil, before pa'al. That's causative. And when we come to the imperfect hifal, it's an AI thematic vowel pattern. That's what we have here. Like if you wanted to put bir, it would be he shattered. And hifil normally has the idea of shattering. And then if you wanted to put he will shatter, yeshaber. That would be the imperfect shava patha, doubling of the middle radical. If you wanted to put it in a causative stem, it would be, the causative would be hishbir. Using Shabbat again, it would have the hey prefix and the I vowel pattern, going after or following hifil, that nomenclature. In the imperfect, it would be yafil. It would be the, again, the E, or excuse me, it would be the AI vowel pattern, and that's what we have here, yar beats seni. And so that's the hifil stem, which is causative. Then you have the hofal, which is passive causative. Hofal, yofal. If we were using shabir, it would be hosh bar, would be the hifal. He was caused to be broken, something like that. It's a passive. And then we have hit payal, which is reflexive. You have a hit before it, and hit, still using pa'al, is a prefix. It's more of a reflexive idea. Hit shaber would be he, for example, himself broke. So the PL would be shattered, ifl would be causative, he caused to break, and PL would be reflexive, he himself broke. And the hifil imperfect would be yit shaber. You put yit before it. Yit pa'el would be the hifil imperfect, and it has the idea of reflexive. So here we have the causative stem, the AI vowel pattern. And notice you have yar bitseni, and here we have the hirig underneath the tsadi. Excuse me. We have seri. Seri. Then we have the noon, which is like a hinge to me. Yad bitseni, and e is your pronominal suffix, first person singular, with the hirik yod. So he causes me to recline. Al me menuchot. Notice al is your preposition. We have an ayin followed by a lamed with the pathak, the a vowel underneath the ayin. You have that little line going between al and me to show that the two are intimately interrelated. Al me. And then we have a mim, and then underneath the mim we have two dots, a tseri, and then we have that little comma like a yod. So he causes me to recline, al me, and me is from the noun mayim, meaning waters, beside waters. And when you put that, that's a dual noun, ayin. When you have a dual noun like that, or a, let's say a plural, and you want to put that in construct where you have two nouns back to back, or two words back to back. So beside waters of resting places, menuchot. Notice the of again is like the book of John. So beside waters of resting places. And here we have mim, and underneath the mim, we have a shava, and that's a vocal shava. It's beginning a word meh, and we're able to hear it. Meh nu chot. Underneath we have noon as the next. Underneath the noon we have a kibbutz. Kibbutz, Kibbus with a dot under it, which is a short U vowel. So beside waters of resting places, notice then we have the chet, the guttural, after the noon. Then there is the holam vav, followed by the tav. Menuchot, it's a feminine plural noun, meaning resting places. So beside waters of resting places, yenachaleni. Notice here, if we go to the root, nahal, it means to lead. And notice again, that's the root you would look up in a dictionary, to lead. Underneath, we have the yod prefix, so we're looking at an imperfect. Yod shows third masculine singular. Tav, second or third feminine, if it had a tav there. And then we have an aleph, first person. But at any rate, we'll get into that later. This yod here is a prefix showing third masculine singular. So beside waters of resting places, he leads me. Yod, notice the shava under it. It's vocal, yeah, it's beginning a word. And then we have the noon and the pathak under that, yena. Now, when you look at thematic vowels in the PL stem, the intensive stem, often called the D stem, because the middle radical is often doubled. Here it's not because of the chet, which has what is called virtual doubling. So yenachaleni, notice we have a shava followed by the pathak. That indicates a PL, that thematic vowel pattern. Chet is your guttural, yenacha, and notice that underneath we have what is called a hurried pathak. Chatef is another word, chatef, H-A-T-E-P-H, a hurried pathak, yenachaleni. Then we have a lamed. Notice we have a tseri underneath that, a long e vowel, yenachaleni, and then we have the ni again, the noon, and the pronominal suffix, first person singular, in the hirik yod, the mi. And then we have two dots showing that we have a sof pasuk. We're at the end of the sentence. So we would read it, benot desha yad bitseni al mei menachot yenah haleni. That is, in pastures of green grass, he causes me to recline. Beside, and al can mean beside here, it's a preposition. Beside waters of resting places, he leads me. What a beautiful thought here. We have what we call like a synonymous parallelism. You have the first phrase, benot desha yad bitseni, in pastures of green grass, he causes me to recline, followed by the second phrase, al mei menachot yenachaleni, that is, beside waters of resting places, he leads me. Synonymous. Both lines are saying the same thing. And we have that, we have parallelism in poetry. What a beautiful thought. The Lord wants us to rest, and he wants to lead the sheep to resting places. So to go around tumultuous waters, sheep become restless. So the Lord wants us to recline, and he wants to lead us to resting places. What a beautiful picture here of the Lord as our great and wonderful shepherd. And in New Testament, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. And he does say, come apart and rest a while.